The Tale of Thorstein Shiver. It is said that the following summer, King Olaf attended feasts in the east around Vik and elsewhere. He feasted at a farm called Reim, with a large company of men. There was a man accompanying the king at that time named Thorstein Thorkel's son. His father, Thorkel, was the son of Aesgeir Scatterbrain, who was the son of Audun Shaft. Thorstein was an Icelandic man who had come to the king the previous winter. In the evening, while people were sitting at the drinking tables, King Olaf made a speech. He said that none of his men should go alone to the privy during the night, and that anyone who had to go must have his bedfellow accompany him, or else be guilty of disobeying him. Everyone drank heartily that night, and when the tables were taken down, they all went to bed. Now, in the middle of the night, Thorstein the Icelander woke up and had to go to the toilet. The man lying next to him was sleeping soundly, and Thorstein certainly did not want to wake him. So he got up, slipped into his shoes, threw on a heavy cloak, and went out to the privy. The outhouse was big enough for 11 people to sit on each side of it. Thorstein sat on a seat nearest the door. When he had been sitting there for a few moments, he saw a demon climb up on the seat farthest in and sit down. Thorstein asked, "Who's there?" The fiend answered,
"It's Thorkel the Thin, who fell upon corpses with King Harold Wartooth."
"And where did you come from?" asked Thorstein. The demon answered that he had just arrived from hell. "What can you tell me about that place?" asked Thorstein. He replied,
"What do you want to know?"
"Who endures the torments of hell best?"
"No one endures them better,"
replied the demon,
"than Sigurd Fafnisbani, killer of the serpent Fafnir."
"What kind of torment does he suffer?"
"He kindles the oven,"
answered the ghost. "That doesn't strike me as much of a torment," said Thorstein.
"Oh, yes it is,"
replied the demon,
"for he is also the kindling."
"There is something in that, then," Thorstein said. "Now, who has the hardest time enduring hell's torments?" The ghost answered,
"Starkut the Old takes it worst, for he cries out so terribly that his screaming is greater torment to the rest of us fiends than almost anything else, and we never get any reprieve from it."
"What torment is it?" asked Thorstein, "that he takes so badly, as brave a man as he is said to have been?"
"He stands up to his ankles in fire."
"Why, that doesn't seem like much to me," replied Thorstein. "As great a hero as he was."
"Then you don't see it,"
said the ghost.
"Only the soles of his feet are sticking up out of the flames."
"That is something," said Thorstein. "Now let me hear you scream once the way that he does."
"All right,"
said the demon. He then threw open his jaw and let fly a great growl, while Thorstein pulled the fur trimming of his cloak up around his head. He was not very impressed and asked, "Is that the best he can scream?"
"Far from it,"
replied the ghost,
"for that is the cry of us petty devils."
"Scream like Starkhead does once," said Thorstein.
"All right,"
said the demon. He then began to scream a second time, so terribly that Thorstein thought it monstrous that such a little fiend could howl so loudly. Again Thorstein wrapped his cloak around his head, but the crying paralyzed him, and he fainted. Then the demon asked,
"Why are you so quiet now?"
When he had recovered, Thorstein replied,
"I'm silent because I'm amazed at what a horrible voice you have, as little a demon as you appear to be. Was that Starcat's loudest cry?" "Not even close,"
he answered.
"Rather, his quietest."
"Well, stop beating around the bush," said Thorstein,
"and let me hear the loudest cry."
The demon agreed to it. Thorstein then prepared himself by folding the cloak, winding it around his head, and then holding it there with both hands. The ghost had moved closer to Thorstein by 3 seats with each cry, so that there were now only 3 seats left between them. The demon then inflated his cheeks in a terrible manner, rolled his eyes, and began to howl so loudly that it exceeded all measure for Thorstein. At that very moment the church bell rang out, and Thorstein fell unconscious to the floor. The demon reacted to the bell by rumbling to the floor. The sound could be heard for a long time down in the ground. Thorstein recovered quickly. He stood up and went to his bed and laid down. Now in the morning everyone got up. The king went to the chapel and heard mass. After that they sat down to eat. The king was not terribly cheerful. He addressed his men. "Did anybody go alone to the privy last night?" Thorstein came forth and fell down before the king, admitting that he had disobeyed his order. The king replied, "It was not such a serious offense against me, but you prove what is said about you Icelanders, that you are very stubborn. But did anything happen?" Thorstein then told the whole story. The king asked, "What good did you think his crying would do to you?"
"I wanted to tell you that, my lord. I thought that since you had warned all of us to not go out there alone, and since the devil showed up, that we would not leave the place unharmed. But I reckoned that you would wake up when he cried out, my lord. And I knew that I would be helped if you found out about it."
"Indeed it happened," said the king, "that I woke up to the sound, and I knew what was going on. I had the bell rung because I knew that nothing else could help you. But weren't you frightened when the demon began to scream?" Thorstein answered,
"I don't know what it means to be frightened, my lord."
"Was there no fear in your heart?" asked the king.
"I wouldn't say so,"
Thorstein replied,
"because when I heard the last cry, a shiver nearly ran down my spine."
Then the king replied, "You will now receive your nickname and be called Thorstein Shiver from now on. Here's a sword I'd like to give you in honor." Thorstein thanked him. It is said that Thorstein was made one of King Olaf's men and stayed with him thereafter until he fell off Olaf's longship, the Serpent, alongside the king's other champions.